So a fascinating question came up in Church Answer Central. For those of you who are not familiar with Church Answer Central, I love to introduce it to you. Church Answer Central is the place where you can get a question answered about the local church anytime, night or day, usually within about an hour or so, but no more than a few hours. So it's like having a church consultant or a coach on your smartphone, and you're just able to ask anything. And it's not AI response, it's live people responding. And we've been doing this for years and years and years. We have thousands of people, church leaders who are part of it. So we'll put that in the show notes if you're interested in being a part of Church Answers membership. It's only $9.97 a month. It includes a lot of other benefits too. But the question came up. About this whole, what do I do about graveside services? I think I'm doing them right. These were pastors asking the questions, but I've never seen anybody outline it. Tell me, give me content on it. That's what we're going to be doing during this podcast. But in the meantime, we want to thank Belay Solutions. As I've said every time, if you need someone virtual to be on your team, Belay is the place to go. I mean, virtual assistants, virtual bookkeepers, whatever that position may be that you need in your organization, we've had it, we love it, and we believe in them. And so we love having Belay as our sponsor. They've provided a download 25 tasks a pastor can delegate to an assistant really for several weeks now. Continue to provide that. You can get that download. Look at the show notes or look at belaysolutions.com/Thom Rainer. Either way, and you can get that download. So let's go back to the question. How do you do a graveside service? Well, let's just look at this because, usually there's all kind of funeral guides for pastors, and it may have a portion of it on graveside services, but there's hardly anything out there that is just on graveside services. So let's talk about it for just a moment. First thing we need to realize is that local areas have local customs, and we need to find out what they are. I've pastored at 4 churches. I've done funerals all over the United States, so they don't change that much. But there may be some idiosyncrasies, and there was particular incidents where the funeral home directors led me astray. That's another story that I've told at an earlier podcast. But the reality of it is it's not going to change that much. But if there are some local traditions, maybe having to do with the viewing of the body, or maybe it has to do with how do you speak to the immediate family, find out about that. Most of the time, if you've done a graveside service, you can pretty much know that what you've done will do very, very well. So just understand that there may be some local customs. There may be some things that you need to know, but most of what you've been doing is most likely fine. Secondly, graveside services, as a rule, are brief. Now, we are assuming that there is a full service preceding it, and that would have been done in the funeral home or the church, one of the two, usually. And so we're presuming that there's been a full service anyway, and the graveside service is just a brief goodbye where there can be closure for the loved ones. And so, the question that I'm often asked is, how long is a graveside service? Well, if you've had a full service, if you've had an hour-long service, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, maybe even 7 or 8. Again, a lot of it depends on temperature and weather. If you've done a graveside service, there's usually a tent, but it's only for the family. And if it's raining or if it's cold or it's too hot, you want to get through these in an expeditious way, not in such a way that you don't honor the deceased, but in such a way that you are aware that there are other people, most of them standing, because most of the chairs are only available for the immediate family. What is included in a graveside service? Well, prayer. Many times these begin with prayer. Very simple. You can decide what you want as far as content of prayer, but it is a prayer that you're thanking God for the life of the deceased. We're hoping that the particular graveside service is for a believer, so he or she is now with Christ in heaven. So there's a prayer, and it may be the opportunity to have another very brief eulogy. Eulogy in itself sounds like it's something long, but this would be something short, maybe a snippet from the person's life. Also, we've heard again and again that it's very important to mention the person's name. As you're doing this graveside service and the casket is about to be put into the grave, it's so important that you're remembering the name and that you're calling out the name. So prayer, eulogy, maybe a brief message, but it really needs to be very brief. Maybe it's Psalm 100, maybe it's John 14, but something very, very brief. And again, if you've had the full service before this, you want to make certain that you are keeping this service relatively brief. If you do not know the deceased, and if you've already had a full service, there's a likelihood that you already know something about them from the family. Now, of course, if you know the person, that's even more important. But here's something we've heard from family members, and we also saw it on Church Answer Central as well. This is a good time, but before you say this temporary farewell, assuming the person is going to heaven, before you say this temporary farewell, this is a good time to just simply say something about that person. It doesn't have to be humorous. It doesn't have to be somber, but just something to indicate that you remember that person. I did the funeral of someone that I was very close to, not a family member, someone I was very close to, and had a lot of humorous things. I didn't want to just have a comedy act at the graveside, but I was able to remember one thing about him that just brought a smile to everyone in this otherwise somber occasion. But use the deceased's name. Now, here's something that I don't know that I practice that much as a pastor, and I continue to do occasional funerals, rarely, but I do. But many of these pastors that have talked about the graveside service and others have said, if you're doing a graveside service as pastor, be the last to leave. I've never thought about that. I usually kind of walk with the family as they're leaving, but they said it's an honoring thing for you to stand behind and to make sure that everybody is spoken to that wants to be spoken to, maybe some who are attending that are not a part of the deceased family, but for you to be there just to speak to people. They say it honors folks. I wish someone had told me that when I was pastoring churches so that I would have been more intentional. I didn't jump out and try to be the first to go. I can assure you of that. But I also was not very intentional about being the last to go. So what is it we need to know? We need to know that this usually brief time called a graveside service is the final farewell on this side of heaven for family members to say goodbye. Closure is important. It's highly symbolic. The casket is put into the ground, and perhaps in some traditions there's something that is put on the casket like flowers or balloons or something of that nature, and sometimes dirt is put on the casket as well. But it is highly symbolic to say this is a transition. This is a time of death until we see him or her again, and it's very important, even though it's very brief, to not only to honor the deceased, but to remember how important it is to the loved ones to have this last moment of connection with the one that they loved and to be able to say goodbye in a way of dignity, in a way of seriousness, but in a way of joy as well. So those are just some of the tidbits we have on graveside services. We actually have a full ebook coming out on it for those who are a member of Church Answers membership. You'll see that coming out later in the year, and so that'll be available for you. But thank you for being a part of Church Answers. Thank you, Belay, as always, for being our sponsor and for providing that download on 25 tasks a pastor can delegate to an assistant. Thank you. If you're watching this on YouTube, hi. If you are listening to it on your favorite podcasting app, give us a rating and review, or give us a subscription at YouTube. Give us a like wherever that is appropriate. And always, thank you for being a part of Church Answers podcast. We're going to continue to work together, partner together in God's name to make churches healthy again. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just two. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just 2 or 3 things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis?
Double bingo.
Well.
double, and maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.